This story is a tragedy that hits so close to home because every DM is vulnerable to the events of this story, and I've personally witnessed it ruin many games. I'm talking, of course, about the DM having a great game, but destroying it in search of the perfect. If you're a DM and design your own game, you might have just flirted with this game-destroying problem. That is, a story of the DM being their own worst enemy and sabotaging their table. Before we get into this though, sponsor time. Good day, Crabos. Whether you're running D&D this week but you haven't had time to prepare, or just looking for inspiration for fleshing out your campaign, Petero's Tome of Adventure has got you covered. This is a 200-pager just bursting at the seams with one-shots and mini-adventures for your D&D 5e campaign. With a mix of levels, themes, and genres, this tome is bound to have what you need to add extra flair to your game. Each adventure has new monsters, NPCs, magic items, battle maps, and a fancy area map, making it the perfect addition to any GM library. With pre-generated character sheets for each adventure, it's also perfect for running a one-shot in a pinch or for running shorter adventures at conventions. Each and every backer will get a free one-shot PDF, so go check out the link in the description for more information. See you there. Sometimes the GM is their own worst enemy, even if they're veterans. In my sophomore year of college, I got invited to play my first tabletop RPG ever. It was a D20 modern game, and the GM was a longtime game runner. He had been running them for over 10 years by the time this started, so he was quite seasoned. The story of this game is actually low-key incredible. It started as an ostensibly, "Oh no, a zombie apocalypse has hit our hometown. How will you and your friends escape?" And it turned into this interdimensional battle between gods and space popes. It was amazing. The GM was incredible. We were all playing ourselves in-game, which is a very new to TTRPGs friendly way to play in my opinion, and all of us except one dude were doing this for the first time. Our group was a lot of new players and one long-time player. The long-timer was a very good friend of the GM, but a serial metagamer who could not control himself around stats. A complete min-maxer. The GM played around this by giving him in-game knowledge no one else had, and essentially turned him into a friendly nemesis kind of guy who constantly tested the party. It was actually a genius way of solving an issue that could not be resolved while still keeping the long-timer in the game. He would occasionally drop cryptic hints about what we should be doing, and was able to do it in the guise of being blessed by one of the gods. Great! It satisfied the guy's sociopathic need to be the main character, while also keeping him in check from actually ruining the game. Every now and then, the GM would put him into situations without in-game knowledge, and he would essentially have to try things in character to regain the god's favor to get back into the GM's notes. All I'm saying is that if you are hell-bent on playing with a problematic player, there are creative ways to make it work for you if you take the time to solve them. I'll interrupt by saying yes, OP is technically correct, but at that point you're playing with fire and I cannot recommend it. That's like saying you can eat healthy while only eating fast food. It might technically be possible, but why would you jump through all the hoops required to do that? I'm not disagreeing, but I am saying that maybe people watching this video, like 9 times out of 10, it's really not worth it. Anyways, roll post. We really had the perfect party. There were crazy guys who were kept in check by morally strong characters, really committed role players who kept everyone in character, people who were geniuses at puzzles. We had basically all the necessities covered in any situation. Someone in the party was great at anything. When we were in trouble, we could always turn to someone else to save us, and it led to a really tight group. The GM was always inventing new ways to try and stifle us, and we would have to come up with radically outside-the-box solutions to try and solve them. Just for an example, we were once imprisoned on another planet somewhere, and we had these seeds that turned people into these level 10 nightmare demons. After exhausting all other options, we charisma rolled the guards into eating the seeds, and they broke the doors of the prison down trying to kill us. We were then able to use other items we had collected over the campaign to neutralize them without combat and escape the complex. Shit like that. Wonderful stuff. The season ended in a massive reveal and a huge climactic battle. New alliances were formed, powers gained, and the GM told us that we would find out more next school year in Season 2. We were all buzzing about it. It's all we talked about all summer long. During the interim, however, the GM decided to do two things. One, expand the player base of the game enormously. Two, he retooled the entire story to make this work. What had previously been a relatively airtight narrative centered around us unlocking powers, seeking to stop this broad, world-spanning conflict, now had this entire United Earth military angle previously missing, as well as an, actually, there's just this one angry guy, and it seemed like a big conflict, but it's actually a very small deal. Many things we did were retconned or never happened because they couldn't have happened with all the new players. For the military angle, I would compare it to something like Metroid Other M, where you took this previously unified solitary force solving issues and handicapped them to essentially doing fetch quests for an otherwise never mentioned cabal of mega power guys. And we had, quote, always been working for them. He also uninvited several people from Season 1 who he felt were not contributing enough roleplay to the table. As well, he gave the metagamer too much knowledge, and the guy was now co-writing, and in some cases, co-GMing. This meant that sometimes going from game to game, the entire plot points changed. NPCs were always changing, acting differently, etc., etc. The GM said this would let us expand the scope of the table, and he wasn't kidding. The first session, there were almost 20 people playing, and the old party, the people who actually knew the story, were a distant minority and were treated as such. Almost all the new players were new to tabletop role-playing games, but were also not given the intimate, welcoming new player experience that we were. OP diagnosed the problem perfectly just now, and I'm not sure they know just how perfect it was. Let me explain. The DM is letting the perfect be the enemy of the good. The DM had it all. A great story, happy, engaged players, fun gameplay, the whole shebang. There's really not much more you can ask for. I say this from experience. That is not often what the DM sees. The DM sees every single missed opportunity, every mistake, and every perceived failed plot point. It's tempting for us DMs to try and rectify every mistake we make to perfect the game. But it's so easy to forget that it isn't just yours. Things you might see as a problem aren't always your fault. Sometimes it's the player exercising their hand on the story, and sometimes it's the natural, free-flowing, wild nature of the game. Trust me, if everything went exactly according to your plan, the game would not be nearly as fun. The DM does not understand this and will commit to a path of destroying his game. This immediately led to interpersonal clashes and murder hoboing. We had an NPC with us that we had saved a year ago who had basically become our party healer. She had some dark stuff that happened to her, and it caused her to look to an outsider like one of the bad guys. We had really, really intense moments with this NPC and grew to love her a lot. The new guys immediately killed her. This upset one of the Season 1 guys so much that he quit the game right then and there. I don't know if you've ever seen someone rage quit a campaign, but it looks like how you think. Quietly gather your dice, your tokens, stand up, take your snacks, and get out of town. Leave the group chat and never talk to anyone again. That dude had bent in half in Season 1 to save that NPC's life many times, and his entire character arc had turned into trying to resolve her story. When she was gone, he was too. Also, I don't know if you've ever played with a group that big, but D20 combat is tedious as hell. If there's more than a certain amount of people, combine that with 10 plus people all trying to learn how to do it on the fly, and it becomes an actual nightmare. Combat against a tiny group of low-level enemies took almost all of Session 1. The GM, bafflingly, was confused by the remnants of the Season 1 cast being upset by this, with all the story changes, the co-GM deal, and all the new people running all over the game. It was impossible to do anything or actually roleplay like the group had been doing for the last year. We told him the game seemed doomed unless he tried to scale it back, or down, or just stop leaving the big chunks of the game up to the metagamer. But he dismissed it as us trying, ourselves, to metagame and not give the new players a chance. I don't understand any of this. I've seen almost every type of horror story in existence, and this is the most confusing thing I've ever read. Not only is this issue very easily diagnosed and fixable, but the DM has experience running a great game. He has all the skills and knowledge, and is somehow confused when, if he completely betrays that information, the game goes poorly. He needs only scale back objectively stupid decisions. Unless he's the type to enjoy slow gameplay, session-long combats that are inconsequential, and oversized tables, I can't see why he ever thought this was a good idea, and why he isn't rolling this back immediately. I guess we'll never know. As for the story stuff, he said it was his and these changes were going to help the narrative in the long run. He always wanted to run a, quote, giant, perfect game, and this was his chance. Oh, I see, I guess we do know. I promise this isn't a gotcha or a rhetorical question, but has anybody watching this video actually seen a giant TTRPG game go well? Like, with double-digit players. I'm not saying they're always doomed to fail, but they are very risky and hard to manage as every player brings their own wants and needs into the game, as well as their own capability to cause problems. I carefully choose the people I invite to my games and design it with consideration to how they enjoy D&D, and the players mold their expectations to fit in the game I'm writing. There's a balance, a give and take. With enough players, the DM cannot possibly cater to everyone, and catering to any one player at any given moment is near impossible without appearing favoritist. It's easy to cater to an individual in a party of 4 because there's enough spotlight to go around. That changes when you have 3 times the players. This is all just based on my personal lack of experience though. If anyone out there has had good campaigns in large groups, please do leave a comment and dunk on me. I'm inviting it and would like to know more. Anyways, here comes the final showdown between OP and the Dungeon Master. Roll post. About 5 sessions into the campaign, one of the Season 1 people, it was me, left. The new players had killed every returning NPC there was, and they were essentially doing whatever they wanted. The GM, I guess, having realized now he had lost control of the game, sent this story in a totally new direction and dropped all remaining elements of the game we had started a year ago. Totally new thing, new characters, new setting, the whole ball game. The new players dropped off, and the last session he did, it was literally just me, the metagamer, and the GM. The session never really started, as the GM just expressed how sad he was that everyone lost interest in his story. I told him, everyone was captivated by his story. One of the players he had disinvited due to not meeting his standards for role-playing still had her notebook in the game's box in his house, full of extremely detailed in-character notes with maps, item lists, investigations, etc., but he broke that story and ran off all the people who actually loved it. He told me that he wanted to run the perfect game. This had been his goal for the entire decade he'd been running campaigns, and he thought the changes he was making would make it better. It didn't. We never played again. This is actually really sad. In his quest to become the perfect DM, he became absolutely terrible. This all could have been avoided with some self-acceptance and understanding that he's a great DM. But of course, dungeon masters are often their own worst critic. So players, if yours is doing good, please let them know that. The next story is about what happens when a player is doing the opposite of good, and no one lets them know that until OP's breaking point. Roll post. This is my story of a D&D campaign that went to hell. Roll post. This campaign started in September of last year. It was my first campaign that I DM'd that lasts more than a single session. At the time, I was about 15 and the other players were around the same age. This was an in-person campaign with some of my friends from school. This story is focused on our group's Barbarian. Barbarian is not a nerd like the rest of the group, and the only reason she joined is because of her boyfriend, Wizard. She is the popular girl at our school and the problem player. Session 0. Everyone was excited for this campaign since they all thought I had very good writing skills and thought I would be a great DM. The campaign I made had no specific themes on purpose, since I wanted to explore multiple themes at once to find the coolest one, since it was my first time. Scheduling was terrible. We would move dates back and forth trying to find a good time to hold the first session, and Barbarian would make it worse by giving me very little updates of her situation for scheduling. And if I even suggested any time or place to hold the session that did not work for her, she would get mad and then not suggest a time. She simply only disagrees in a very aggressive way and then provides no feedback. This made me despise session planning with her from then on. Session 1. This session was the best of the ones to come in the future. I did the classic start in a tavern scenario to begin the campaign, and it went pretty well. All the players roleplayed with each other a lot and seemed to be having fun. They split into 2 groups to multitask. Group 1 was made of Barbarian and our rogue doing an errand from the tavern owner to get some beef at the nearby butcher, while Group 2, made up of Wizard and Druid, were waiting outside the tavern for someone to meet them. This session was canceled twice before we actually had a date to hold it, which was really annoying, but I'm not blaming a specific player for this one. But while planning, Barbarian would completely go off topic and send vor videos or talk about her frogs. Okay, I understand letting some petty annoyances slide. I understand letting big problems slide because you aren't confident enough to stick up for yourself. But we are like 3 seconds into the story and there are already 2 major moments where this person should have been dropped from the group. First during the scheduling hostility, and second during sending that stuff to your friends. Dropping actual porn in the group chat unprompted is worth an immediate ban hammer, and nobody who's worth anything will disagree with you there. Session 2. This went pretty well. The party had went through a dungeon and met a spaceship scientist, which will be important in the future, but tensions started rising slowly, and I didn't notice until it was too late. Between sessions, Barbarian would complain about Rogue behind his back and talk about how she hated him, as if flexing off to look cool. She also never told it to him, simply told us behind his back. I started trying to plan the next session, but nobody would respond except for Rogue and Bard. Then, when I criticized Barbarian for talking about Rogue behind his back, she got incredibly mad and said this exact quote: "I am sick and tired of you guys blaming me for any negative shit and call me mean all the time because I'm honest, so have fun with the campaign without me and enjoy not having me around at lunch." She left the server soon after. The Wizard, her boyfriend, talked about how we should apologize and she was just mad. I didn't respond out of spite. Okay, great, pack it up everybody, that was the entire horror story. This is great, the easiest win ever. The person everybody hates just left on their own. You have an out, She's gone, so surely you'll let her stay gone, right? Right? Soon after, we made up. Worst mistake of my life. We stumbled upon the idea of continuing the campaign, but without Rogue. Everyone had agreed, but Bard was hesitant. Barbarian had convinced the rest of the party to hate Rogue except for me and Bard. I stayed friends with him and still am now. But the reason I agreed was because I desperately wanted to continue my campaign. I was quickly reacquainted with the hell of session planning. If I even suggested to host at her house, she would lash out with insults. Sessions were few and far between, with about one session a month, since Barbarian would cancel for entire months with the excuse being, I really want to hang out with my girlfriends. We also never told Rogue that he was kicked out of the campaign. He simply thought that it ended there. I am now going to summarize the in-game stuff since the actual events do not help that much. Throughout the sessions, Barbarian would distract the druid by going on her phone and watching the Vor videos I mentioned before together. She would also steal the markers from behind my DM screen and doodle on the battle maps while I focused on something. If she was actually paying attention, she would control the group's decisions by herself, and when someone made a suggestion that was different from hers, usually by Bard, she would get mad and start yelling, and sometimes throwing things across the table at people. If I intervened and let the other player do what they wanted to do, she would curl up in her angry chair and not play the game for the next hour. Okay, things are about to get really dark really fast, so I just want to butt in to commentate on this more game-centered stuff first. Barbarian does not want to be in the game. Some people just play D&D because that's what their friends are doing, not because they actually want to play the game. To them, the game is simply a means to an end rather than an end in itself. There is literally nothing wrong with that. It's a perfectly valid way to have fun with your gang. But if someone is a bad friend and they're only playing it for the friend element, they are going to be a bad player and ruin it for everyone. That's the answer to this situation. She does not want to be a good player, she wants to be a drama person. Some friend groups are built on and thrive in drama, but D&D and interpersonal drama do not mix like that. Anyways, this story is about to take a serious turn before spiraling into its end. Roll post. Another common theme was physical abuse. If I ever misgendered Druid, then Barbarian would punch me in the head with no warning, which would sometimes get me to yell. Side note, she was in a single sport and weighed a little more than me, so she thought that she was better than everyone else because of that. I bodybuild and know a martial art, so I could have very much beat her ass into the floor, but I was practicing restraint at the time. She also had a history of physical abuse, especially with me, outside of D&D. On record, I was kicked in the balls twice, hit in the head 3 times, and multiple situations of death threats, whether it be with a hammer or a gun from her dad's safe. Some reasons for these threats or attacks were because I mentioned that her character is not immortal and she would get mad, which led to the abuse and threats. This all happened until session 6. Planning got so bad that I would say to have a session at a time as a joke, to watch as people either didn't respond or watch Barbarian attack me for some random reason. I was done. I shut down the campaign forever. A bit later, me and Barb had another fight, but this was my breaking point. Don't ever talk to me again. I hope you die a slow and painful death. Thanks. No, I had so many screenshots in there and you wrecked it. No one likes you. I blocked her on everything and told the wizard that I am forever cutting ties with her, and since he was dating her, he sided with her. We are no longer friends. I told Rogue everything and made sure all his questions were answered. Today, I am still great friends with Rogue and Bard. I started a new online D&D campaign based on Bloodborne, and I'm having a ton of fun with it, since 2 of the players in it, being Rogue and Bard, I'm trying to become friends with Wizard again to see if he's willing to be friends with me without me being friends with Barbarian, but I doubt that will happen. And in my new campaign, she is proudly referred to as the B word that will not be monetized. All in all, I think I handled it well. Look, OP, you handled it well when you finally handled it. I'm not going to rake you over the coals given you were 15 at the time, which is kind of the appropriate age to learn tough lessons about how to handle these situations. But to speak to everyone watching right now, so much happened so fast that should have been acted on immediately. I get that she was friends with people who were in the same friend group, but this behavior needs to be shut down fast. I can see someone having anxiety because, what if people don't listen to you and start defending her instead? My brother in Christ, if someone tolerates you getting assaulted and threatened with a gun, that person is not your friend, their opinion is worthless. I'm glad that in the end things seem okay, and you did handle it well at the end, but you were also right when you said that letting her back in the first place was a massive mistake, and it's not one I suspect you'll be making again. So for those reasons, I have hope for OP and their D&D group. Also, I just need to get this out real quick before this video ends. Some people in the comments have been doubting that I'm using my own voice in my videos, thinking that I'm using AI speech. Trust me, if I was using an AI voice for my content, I would be uploading a lot more frequently than once every 2 damn weeks. On that note, I really appreciate the comments checking in on me. I'm shallow like that and really easy to please, so validation from internet strangers saying nice things in the comments is actually really reassuring. That said, till next time.